Let's wrap up our section on displaying quantitative data with graphs, doing one more example of comparing distributions. We've talked about what it means to describe a distribution using SOCs, but we want to talk a little bit more about comparing our distributions. This is a very common question to see on AP exams as well as tests and quizzes in this class. So the example we have at hand. We have used Census at Schools random data selector to choose 50 students from each country. Here are dot plots of the household sizes reported by the survey respondents. We want to compare the distributions of household size for these two countries. So here's an AP exam tip. When you're comparing distributions of quantitative data, it is not enough to just list the values for the center and for the variability of each distribution. We are not making a list. We are writing a paragraph where we are comparing. So you want to make sure you're explicitly using words like greater than, less than, or about the same as. Okay? Now I know in this section we haven't gone too deep as far as how to actually calculate center or the variability, but we can still kind of see what we need to do. So let's go through this example together. So the first one you want to talk about is the shape. Right? We talked in depth about the different ways you can describe shape, whether it's symmetric, skewed right, skewed left, if you see any gaps, where do you see peaks, things like that. So the big thing to mention, the distribution of household size for the UK sample is roughly symmetric. Okay? You can see here how it's, most of it's in the middle and then it kind of tapers off on each side. And it has a single peak at 4 people. The distribution of household size for the South Africa sample is skewed to the right, right? You can see the tail, it peters off towards the right-hand side, makes it skewed right. Single peak again is at 4, but there's a big gap between 15 and 26. Of all of that information, what's the most important? Saying that the UK sample is roughly symmetric and that the South Africa sample is skewed to the right. If you hadn't said the things about the peaks, that would be okay. All right, so make sure you definitely mention the shape, but the extra other information is also helpful. Notice how we also talked about the context, right? I don't even need to look at this graph or have the question to see in front of me to know, oh, I'm talking about household size for UK versus household size for South Africa. So we are including context in our descriptions. Next, talk about outliers. While we don't have a formal way to calculate it yet, we can notice that there don't appear to be any outliers for the UK distribution. And then the South African distribution seems to maybe have 2 outliers, the households that have 15 and 26 people. Notice how I didn't just say outliers at 15 and 26. No, we talked about people, we talked about households, right? Again, throwing in that context. Center. Again, we're going to talk more about center in a future section, but we're talking how, and we're using a comparative word here. Household sizes for the South African students tend to be larger than for the UK students. And then there's numbers to back it up, okay? It turns out the median for South Africa is about 6, and the median for the UK students is 4. So using numbers to back it up, but also using comparative language, larger. Not just saying South Africa median is 6, UK median is 4. No, we're saying one is larger than the other. And then finally, variability, which is going to be the thing we say. I might use words like spread, but we really mean variability. How does it vary? One of the ways you can talk about variability is talking about the range. So the household sizes for the South African students, they vary more. It goes from 3 to 26 people, right, with a range of 23. Whereas the UK only ranges for 4. It goes from 2 to 6 people. So the things we talked about, we made sure we had context and we also had comparative language. If you look in your video notes, there's an extra example at the end. This came from an old released AP exam, so you can see kind of what you might expect on any test or quiz from me, but also on the AP exam. There is an answer key for that, which I will share with you at a later date. And I want you to try this on your own. So I expect to see that you have tried this. Make sure you remember to fully answer the question, talking about your shape, your center, your spread, your variability, also using context and comparative language. That's all for this video, folks. Thanks so much.